Within 35 years, not just what is possible, but what is permissible is completely altered. This is the story of how the movies reflect and influence a time of rapid change. How social, military, and artistic advancements create a new world on the screen and behind it. Mostly, this is a story of the tension that exists between the films that are created, those who censor them, and the ones who oppose such censorship.
Why, oh, why be good when being bad is so sublime? After all, before the fall, were we really having such a good time? Why, oh, why be good when the opposite is so much fun? It makes me frown to turn it down. The devil's got me on the run. In the Garden of Eden, my sweetie and me, sitting there naked near the serpent's tree. If he says have an apple, have two, have three, I wouldn't resist at all. Why, oh why be good when immorality is just so swell? I can't say no, so off I go. I'm going straight to help me, please. I'm falling.
Why be good? You never want to do the things that you should. Why be good? Bad is so sublime. Did it. Why be good? I'd like to drag you down and you know I could. Why be good? Let's have a hell of a time.
If he says have an apple, have two, have three, wouldn't resist at all.
The threat of censorship has long been a restrictive force upon society. In the late 1800s through the turn of the century, a law called the Comstock Act enforces a penalty for sending obscene materials through the mail. Anthony Comstock boasts of impounding and destroying hundreds of thousands of photographs, books, and contraceptive devices. The punishment for such obscenity is up to $10,000 or 10 years in prison. Comstock also boasts of being responsible for more than 15 suicides. In this new century, rapid change is upon us. President Theodore Roosevelt is loyal to strict Victorian values and against the growing strain of women voicing their desire for change.
It's an entirely different world. I was raised with very strict parents. They felt it was not proper to show great emotion in public.
Rules of society state that any sexual indiscretions which give rise to public gossip are punished by social death or cutting.
These hypocritical people who hid sex, you couldn't talk about it. Oh, that was something you never talked about, was sex.
Suddenly, the world is able to look at itself, moving, and we see for the first time an era reflected on film.
The visualness of the films, the movement of the films, opens up a world on so many levels that's impossible for us to comprehend today. It was lifting a veil on the entire world.
Electricity pours through penny arcades and Nickelodeons where, for pocket change, people see moving pictures. The New York Evening World states, "For the first time in the history of the world, it is possible to see what a kiss looks like." The idea has unlimited possibilities.
Discussions and debates started to arise about what's appropriate. What's appropriate for people to see, which of course inevitably leads to what's appropriate for people to be doing. So censorship immediately emerged as a key issue linked directly to the medium of film.
the Chicago Tribune launches an attack on the Nickelodeons, describing their influence upon society as vicious.
The Presbyterian, Methodist, Baptist, and Congregational frowned on theatricals as being worldly. It's nothing new, of course. It was sex in drama from the very word go way back in ancient Greece.
Audiences demand to know the names of their favorite stars. And out of the Biograph studios comes little Mary Pickford. In this rare early film, 19-year-old Mary co-stars with her off-screen husband, Owen Moore. Art imitates life, and their real marriage is an unhappy one. In Owen's dream, Mary gives her husband the wife he's always longed for. She also turns out to be his worst nightmare. Mary Pickford brings a fresh and honest approach to film acting. Her performance is natural, surprisingly subtle.
I was a mood actress. That is, I didn't do anything I didn't feel. There's something to me so sacred about that camera.
Mary Pickford, along with many other ambitious artists, flocked to Los Angeles, California.
And Hollywood, of course, attracted the adventurous, the curious, the imaginative people left their homes and flocked to Hollywood. And they were all thrown together like children into this pot. And movie making was so much fun.
8 to 10 million Americans go to the movies every day. Fans flock to the theaters to see their favorite stars.
I never thought of being a movie actress. That was something like being a burlesque queen. That's so far back, when they were flickers.
The first sexual revolution is about to take place, and the medium of film is the perfect outlet for open sexual expression. Enter upon the screen, the vamp. The vamp is the first dangerous woman of the movies. So dangerous that her films are often restricted. In 1917, in Chicago, Theda Bara's film Camille is banned for anyone under the age of 21. Bara and Fox Film Corporation sued the Chicago censors for $100,000. The lawsuit helped bring more than $100,000 worth of patrons, eager to see all of Theda Bara's releases. Although the novelty soon wears off.
The vamp doesn't last very long. They suddenly, very quickly, begin to look like caricatures.
Nita Naldi recalls years later, a man would run 20 miles if he ever stumbled on a woman really looking like that. It was difficult to convince an audience that you were such a femme fatale that you could lure a man from his work and his woman merely by raising and lowering your eyelashes. Director Cecil B. DeMille brings a sensual appeal to the movies with his sexual and societal melodramas. In 1915, Cecil B. DeMille brings to the screen The Cheat, the story of a society woman who borrows money from a rich Japanese man. The collateral for the loan involves sexual favors. When the woman reneges on her debt, he takes his revenge. DeMille's introduction of overt sadomasochism is sensational. both to male and female audience members.
Cecil certainly made a big effect in the direction movies went toward. Cecil had a very large influence on the development of movies.
With the power of film comes the inevitable rise of the movie star. And Mary Pickford becomes the most beloved female star in the world. Her sexuality lies in her strength and in her childlike sense of fun.
Mary Pickford is a dynamic force. She is the most powerful woman in Hollywood. A tycoon, really. And as Adolf Zucker said about her, she could do anything. She could have run the whole business.
I never had any trouble with my directors because I didn't embarrass them. If I wished to, I had the power. But I don't believe in embarrassing people. Or scene, I would suggest it.
Mary also takes control of her personal life and begins a love affair with actor Douglas Fairbanks.
Douglas Fairbanks is a very sexy man, an adventuresome boy, a delightful action figure. He's got enormous charisma. Douglas and Mary Pickford were married to other people, had a notorious love affair, and were in fact undergoing a fairly scandalous life together.
In 1917, President Woodrow Wilson enters America into World War I, and the stars of the screen go on tour selling war bonds. They raise millions.
When Doug and Mary went to sell war bonds, they found that millions of people came out for them. Well, they could not believe their good fortune, and they started to think, wow, I'm in a position now of being a god to people around the world. I have to rethink really how I am supposed to act. Am I a role model now?
As American men enlist for the war, opportunities arise for women. By 1917, 700,000 women are in war work, and opportunities also arise at the film studios. The war gives women an excuse to lighten their load, and lavish clothes go into storage. Cecil B. DeMille's films increasingly assert the importance of fashion, as Hollywood supplies the public with the latest concepts of allure and glamour.
You had all of America and all of the world actually changing their looks as something happened on the screen. The women wanted to look their best, and what they felt was the best look was what they were seeing up on the screen.
Gloria Swanson becomes Cecil B. DeMille's favorite star. DeMille creates a perfect persona for her, one which embodies glamour and sophistication like none other, exuding sleek allure and confidence with every move she makes.
They loved one another. He always called her affectionately "little fellow." She made the perfect star for him to dress in these incredible get-ups. He understood that he could use dream sequences and fantasy sequences and returns to imaginary past. Film found a way to give Americans a whole new attitude towards sex, a whole new freedom, by pretending that either we weren't responsible or it wasn't really happening. How smart was that?
And this is at a time the Victorian age is just barely dying out. And women across the country are going to see these movies, which not only show them all these new fashions, but much more importantly, giving them an empowerment in their lives. This is a fabulous time for women.
A true liberation is realized when President Wilson gives women the right to vote.
Women voted out the sale and transportation of alcoholic drinks.
The Volstead Act, or National Prohibition Act, is passed on October 28, 1919. Prohibition gives a whole new reason to rebel against societal rules.
After World War I, they threw off the corsets, and jazz came in. The girls would go into the ladies' room and remove their corsets so they could dance closer to the men. Oh, they thought that was scandalous. It was a celebration.
People are under the impression that the 1960s was the time when all the moral codes were broken and our world changed. But actually, it had happened in the 1920s. Immediately following World War I, the whole structure of society shattered. Women cut their hair, women cut off their skirts, they started smoking. Everybody was drinking, drugs were all over the place.
Hollywood is now the center of American film production, allowing producers, directors, and stars to thumb their noses at attempts for restraint and control.
We were like children. There was a sense of freedom and abandonment because we had had a war to end all wars. Everybody was going to be a millionaire in the stock market, even your taxi driver.
Douglas Fairbanks and Mary Pickford secure divorces from their spouses and quickly marry each other. They not only survive the scandal, they are named King and Queen of Hollywood in 1920.
It truly is amazing the way she overrode all of the potential scandal that could have happened to her. She would never have survived CNN, but or the 24-hour news cycle. But nobody cared.
The power of the star, the money they made, the importance they were, the royalty they became, the importance of them not having a scandal attached to them was paramount. And I mean that the moguls were watching over this.
Hollywood is threatened with government censorship when a series of scandals become public in the heart of the film world. One actor is sacrificed in a scandal that could not be repressed. Comedian Roscoe Fatty Arbuckle is charged with manslaughter when starlet Virginia Rapé bleeds to death under mysterious circumstances after a party in San Francisco.
Things go wrong at parties. Sometimes it gets in the papers. People who were running the industry said, this is not going to be good for business, so we have to clamp down and straighten things out here.
In December of 1921, Postmaster General William H. Hayes is invited to take control of the film industry. Hayes' first victim is Fatty Arbuckle.
No question about it, he was a scapegoat. He was a major, major star, making just endless money. And then that thing up in San Francisco was all over the paper, and Arbuckle was finished, absolutely finished.
Within days of his total acquittal, the exoneration, in fact, an unprecedented apology coming from the jury, Will Hayes bans him from the screen for life. Because that is what Will Hayes had been hired to do.
With the Arbuckle case still on the front pages, director William Desmond Taylor is found dead in his Hollywood home. Both his girlfriend, actress Mary Miles Minter, and comedian Mabel Normand are implicated in the murder.
Nobody really had the heart of it, but when it came down toward the end that the most likely suspect involved Mary Miles Minter, people stopped going to her movies. Mary Miles Minter was a little soft, sweet little thing, and people could just dismiss her.
The question was, what was their involvement with this man? What kind of lives were these three individuals leading? All of that made the media, and of course America, question, what is Hollywood like? We go see the product that they make every week. They're feeding us ideas and images, but how do they live? Are they not living by the same standards, the same moral values by which we live?
William Desmond Taylor's death gives Hayes his baptism of fire. Within 20 years, the population of Los Angeles has increased 8 times its size, a boom directly related to the film industry. The top talent in Hollywood gathers to create their own studio. Together, Mary Pickford, Douglas Fairbanks, Charlie Chaplin, and D.W. Griffith form United Artists.
They all thought that they should do something to get total creative control and also the financial control. And they were voicing these opinions that maybe we should form our own company to do our own distribution. And that's how United Artists was born.
The lunatics are taking over the asylum. All kinds of barbs were thrown at them. But of course, that was because of the genuine fear the formation of United Artists sent through the industry, sent through those studio moguls. This really threatened what they had claimed was their authority.
United Artists invites their peers to join them in taking control of their art. Italian-born actor Rudolph Valentino is enticed by the promise of financial as well as creative control. After years of frustration with Paramount Studios and with his typecasting, Rudolph Valentino is the first male exotic sex symbol. The Daily Mirror describes him as the personification of irresistible sex magnetism. Valentino is actually very shy and private, and he is embarrassed by the attention. "Heaven knows I'm no chic," he states. "I let them play me up as a lounge lizard, a soft, handsome devil whose only sin in life was to sit around and be admired by women."
There was the kind of surrendering of responsibility, that it's this man from another culture, the man with a different morality, a different set of sexual rules, who takes you over against your will. He's the "it's not your fault" avenue to hot sex.
European charms permeate the screen. Pola Negri is aggressive, defiant, and very modern.
Pola Negri was also a woman who knew who to be for the public. She understood, I need to play my role off screen as well as on. And when she came to Hollywood, she knocked people off their seats with her behavior.
The 1920s give rise to the flapper. This girl isn't frightening. She's fun.
Things started to show, and although there was objections to it, I think the power to change was stronger than the power to repress it. There was a whole revolution for women.
Suddenly, it's okay to appear nude in print, for the sake of art. Nudity is presented as tasteful and beautiful. The advent of art magazines has a lot to do with a new permissiveness, as more and more females drop more and more clothing in print, on the stage, and on the screen.
Why be good? I'd like to drag you down and you know I'd come along. Why be good? Let's have a hell of a time.
Colleen Moore makes it okay to be a rebellious flapper.
Colleen Moore was your safe flapper. She was your innocent flapper. She was your flapper next door. Whereas Clara Bow, watch out, lock your doors, protect your daughters, and, you know, cover up your boys' eyes, because here comes Clara Bow. Clara Bow so clearly liked sex.
There are blues that you get from crying, but the bluest blues that beat are the kind that's always on my mind, and they're the very meanest kind. They're the blues my naughty sweetie gives to me.
Clara Bow is the first natural sex symbol, a woman who doesn't have to work at it, she just has to enjoy it. Producer B.P. Schulberg bills her as the hottest jazz baby in films.
She was really the personification of the Scott Fitzgerald jazz baby at the time for changing, and she was the perfect vehicle for it.
Clara was a young woman who didn't have a very good background. She was an utterly vulnerable creature.
Clara lives a free sexual lifestyle also off-screen. As long as she brings in the box office, the studio protects her. And she is now Hollywood's self-proclaimed it girl.
She really was pulling Paramount along for much of the 20s. So as a result, people were afraid to rein her in, either on the screen or off the screen. In a day when, you know, sexual matters were never spoken of in mixed company or anywhere else, alluding to shocking behavior.
Louise Brooks, along with Clara Bow, represents a complete break from the Victorian spirit. Louise has a sensual and erotic ease accompanied by a startling beauty. Her cool attitude incenses studio head B.P. Schulberg. Barely a starlet, Louise has the attitude of a star.
Clara Bow knew how to play the game. Louise didn't want to play the game. She wasn't afraid to stand up there and tell the head of the studio where to go if she didn't like what was going on. She didn't take any BS from anybody. So she became the bad girl at Paramount Studios. My father loved that independent woman. Louise also had some pretty fiery language, and my father liked that too.
In 1924, director William DeMille writes that the New York State Board of Censors has made cuts in 386 films. He states, "The American people must conform to the idea that ignorance is the best form of innocence. It must take for granted that to see evil is to desire it." In 1925, Norma Talmadge stars in The Lady, a society melodrama about a woman who is betrayed and abandoned by her husband. Destitute and pregnant, she finds solace and acceptance in a brothel. Due to her circumstances, she is forced to abandon her child. The Hays office issues a list of don'ts to the movie studios, but they are careful to include no provisions for the actual enforcement of this list. Censorship becomes something of a paper tiger, left up to the individual states or not at all.
The Motion Picture Producers and Distributors Association would take a film and look at it reel by reel and get the scissors out and cut it if they felt that it wasn't right for people to see. This was costing the studios about $2 million a year, and the reason for that was because they didn't put the parts back in they had cut out. So you have a film that's no longer what was made.
Gloria Swanson is used to living her life the way she chooses, ignoring protests from the studio.
In my own way, in my own time, I was a rebel. I didn't go along with the current. I was the first to have a baby. That really set Hollywood on its ear. When I told Mr. Lasky I was going to have a child, I thought he would never come out of the swoon.
Gloria Swanson is warned by Jesse Lasky to curb her behavior both on and off the screen. During her second divorce, Gloria's husband blackmails her with the claim that she had been having extramarital affairs with 14 men, one of them being Cecil B. DeMille. Jesse Lasky insists that she settle out of court, admitting guilt for something she has not done in order to keep a public scandal out of the papers.
Live your life on the screen for your public. Whatever you do off screen, well, be careful about it, because we don't care what you do as long as it doesn't get in the papers.
Gloria Swanson is forced to sign a new agreement. Outraged, she responds, "In other words, the studio was putting me on a tight leash. They were scaring me into being a well-behaved star, telling me that unless I towed the line, they could cut me off. I was angry and humiliated." Gloria Swanson is brought into the United Artists fold, where she is welcomed to pursue her career on her own terms.
I go where angels fear to tread. So I'm just as likely to swim upstream when everybody's swimming down, because I have ideas of my own.
For Gloria Swanson to turn down $1 million a year from Paramount to sign with United Artists is a testimony to the power of United Artists.
As an independent producer, Gloria Swanson acquires the rights to, and somehow manages to trick Hayes into allowing her to, bring to the screen Somerset Maugham's Rain, the story of a fallen woman on the run from the police.
Rain was on Hayes's list of unfilmable plays. So Gloria Swanson went around the back door and called it Sadie Thompson. She went and had lunch with Will Hayes and said, "I need your help, because of course we would never have it be a minister. We want to change it to a reformer." And Hayes bought in hook, line, and sinker.
Sadie's plans for escape are thwarted by the reformer. She gives up a second chance at life because she is haunted by his words. When the reformer who has tried to convert her succumbs to his own lust, Sadie returns to her former ways, with no enforced production code to stop her. Always one to push the envelope, Cecil B. DeMille creates The Godless Girl, an attack on atheism with a shocking scenario about a girl with no conscience. DeMille is famous for his tactic of showing nearly anything he wants and using a last real redemption as cover.
You could show all the sin, all the sex, all the violence, all the depravity you wanted, as long as God was triumphant in the last reel. And the evildoers were punished, and virtue triumphed, and people walked into the light. And in the meantime, he got away with all this sex and violence.
DeMille states his opinion on the matter. In order to promote reform, it is first necessary to show the wages of sin.
Making movies in the period of the Hayes office was a constant negotiation to see what you could get away with and what you couldn't. It was just part of doing business.
There is one woman who not only ignores the censors, but she defies them. Mae West has her own following in the theater. Not only does she star in racy plays, she writes as well as produces them. Mae is not afraid to speak openly about sex. In fact, she builds her entire career around it.
The lasting value and the lasting impact of Mae West is that she liberated the American public from Victorian prudery. And she was all about demolishing the double standard between men and women.
May states for the press, "In this enlightened age of ours, the world boasts of the fact that it is more open-minded and more intelligent than it has ever been. Science reveals greater secrets every day, and even God is doubted fearlessly. But the great majority of people are still terribly in the dark when it comes to one of our greatest truths: sex."
She had her own ethics. She proved all the people who lambasted her or put her down for, glorifying the homosexual or the prostitute. She was not the hypocrite that a lot of people were.
In March 1927, Mae West and 23 members of the cast of her play Sex plead not guilty before the grand jury of New York. Mae and her cast are indicted for the production of an allegedly immoral play. "People like to be shocked, so why not shock them?" Mae said. "Where's the harm? And I know what they like, so I give it to them. I wrote the story myself. It's all about a girl who lost her reputation but never missed it." It is only a matter of time before Mae West appears on the motion picture screen, bringing an altogether new type to the world of film. Sexual parody with a seductive voice. A shock hits the nation in 1926 when Rudolph Valentino is laid to rest after he dies from complications from a perforated ulcer. Writer H.L. Mencken comments, "The predicament of poor Valentino touched me. Here was a young man who was living daily the dream of other young men. Here was one who was catnip to women. Here was one who had wealth and fame. And here was one who was very unhappy." The dream of stardom reaches across the globe. And beautiful women and talented directors from all over the world come to work in the most successful location for the production of motion pictures. Swedish actress Greta Garbo comes to Hollywood and signs a contract to make films at MGM Studios. She is Hollywood's latest foreign sexual icon.
You can't say that the vamp completely disappeared with the flapper because, of course, what was Garbo? They were suddenly pulled up short because they had a realization that they had no heroine with youth, beauty, or personality enough to make free love sympathetic. So at that point, enter Greta Garbo.
Garbo's most revealing scenes are played out with her lover off-screen, John Gilbert.
Her reaction to him, it's just even a physical thing. If they touch hands, her face changes. She really responded to him as she didn't respond to anybody else that I could see on the screen.
Hollywood represents freedom to some and shackles to others. The studios own their stars, and they keep them on a short leash due to the ever-present fear of impending censorship.
They were so afraid of the scandal. You know, they had to keep their eye on. They didn't trust these people with good reason. You know, they were all misbehaving like crazy.
John Gilbert has no respect for a system which he considers to be hypocritical.
My father was irreverent. I don't think Father hated anybody. He just sort of dismissed them. Well, you don't dismiss Louis B. Mayer.
Louise Brooks also feels contempt for the system, and so she escapes Hollywood studio executives to star in Pandora's Box, filmed in Berlin and directed by G.W. Pabst.
That was the nature of her flibberty-gibbet character, both off as well as on camera. And it was her appeal to Pabst.
Lulu is a mythical figure, a creature who uses her beauty to get what she desires, leading her down a self-destructive path toward complete ruin.
The revealing scene in which she sits on the Shigolch's lap, the old man who is essentially just a pimp. She's on his lap and she says, everybody wants something from me, and it's true. And it's also true that everybody who does so and gets something from her usually ends up being destroyed. But the key is that this happens with her being unaware of it. All she is trying to do is share this incredible sexuality or eroticism, or even you could just say affection. What Lulu does is to bring out the worst qualities that exist at the deep, dark, horrible heart of all men.
Her life destroyed, Lulu ends up a prostitute. On Christmas Eve, she is brutally murdered by Jack the Ripper.
The only true love scene is this one with Jack the Ripper.
Like Lulu, Louise Brooks could not be tamed.
As Louise herself put it, sex was the business of the town. And she herself, Louise, was a hard partying girl, enjoying the smorgasbord that Berlin had to offer.
I really didn't know any of the actors. In the first place, Pops didn't want me to know any. He was so afraid that I'd run out at night and go to all those lesbian joints or get drunk.
The censors take the shears to Pandora's Box.
Pandora's Box was hugely censored in Germany and butchered to death because it was so morally objectionable in the view of the censors, and that by the time it hit the United States, which was much later, it was further butchered, and it played in New York, for instance, for about 10 minutes.
A brash experimentation that up to now has only been discussed as a theoretical possibility
Green 80, Joe.
becomes a reality.
Say 27 and 42.
Joe, don't check the mic with the mic.
At that point, nobody was interested in silent films. The best silent film of 1928 or 9 could not compete with the worst sound film at the box office.
Before MGM made Garbo's first talkie, they prepared her for more than a year. Clara Bow has only 2 weeks of preparation for the undistinguished properties Paramount gives her. Wild Party is the story of a college girl living the party life at school.
Save your strength, Samson. You may need it.
She is reformed by the love she has for her professor.
You mean you hate me?
Yes. I hate you and I love you. I hate you for what you've been, and I love you for what you could be.
Will be, Gil.
Clara's behavior behind the scenes can no longer be buried by the studio.
Say, how many guys are you in love with, anyway?
One.
You. Why, 2 minutes ago, you were getting pash with me. And if it wasn't me, it would be somebody else. You couldn't love anyone.
She was like a little girl, really. There was something every damn day with Clara. She was so innocent, so vulnerable. She had no protection at all.
In 1931, a disgruntled assistant publishes a scandalous pamphlet exposing Clara Bow for having numerous affairs.
She was an enormously big star for a long time. And she did get, unfortunately, some publicity that was not the best of situations at that time.
New faces arrive with voices to match, and established stars find their positions threatened as the studios prepare to change all of the rules. Clara Bow has a portion of her salary placed into a trust. If she misbehaves, the trust fund disappears.
When things started to change with the coming of sound, and she really had a problem, and it was obvious that they were not going to be able to carry her.
Haven't you ever had a girl back home that you used to hold close in your arms and kiss sometimes?
Oh.
I thought so. Couldn't you shut your eyes and pretend I'm
All right, good.
She wasn't going to be able to carry the studio any longer financially. Then things changed in a big way, and she really was censured in a way that Arbuckle had been, only financially.
Paramount now focuses on Marlene Dietrich as their new sex symbol. They expect her not only to be their answer to Garbo, but they also are relying on her to make it in sound pictures.
What she disliked very much was that at first she felt that she was an ersatz Garbo. She was brought as a rival to MGM. They didn't care about Dietrich per se. As long as she was able to make MGM sweat a little, Paramount was happy.
Dietrich has an amused, no-nonsense approach to sex, and she is appalled by the morals clause. She states, "In America, sex is an obsession. In other parts of the world, it's a fact."
My mother was very angry. They have no right. What I do as somebody who earns their living is one thing. What I do outside of that structure, she lived her life the way she wanted to live it, not the way the studio would have liked.
The studio contacts Louise Brooks to return to Paramount and dub her voice over the silent footage that she had shot for the film The Canary Murder Case. She refuses, and she ends her career.
So they called me and they said, you must return to Hollywood to make this into a talkie. I said, well, I'm sorry, I'm not returning to Hollywood. And they said, well, you must be kidding. I said, no, I'm not kidding. They said, well, how can we make it into a talkie without you? And I said, I really don't know.
It was her theory that the studios were capitalizing on all the confusion over sound in order to break contracts and cut salaries and tame the stars.
The first publicity that came out about me in Hollywood when talkies was, they said Louise Brooks is one of those unfortunate people whose voice, Paramount put this out, as if I didn't have enough trouble, whose voice didn't record well. And though that Hollywood treatment is murderous, just murderous. You're not a person anymore. You know, the people who've been to dine with you and you spent weekends with, they look right at you. It isn't as if they rebuffed you. You don't exist anymore.
In October 1929, the world as we know it collapses.
When the Depression finally hit, they still kept cranking out movies. For a few cents to be able to go to a movie and get lost in that make-believe world.
In the entire history of movies, 1929 was the most profitable year ever. The big problem in terms of censorship and the content of movies was that all of a sudden, the film is on a disc. A disc cannot be censored. The point is, you can't cut that.
I'm Cherry Malott. They know about me from San Francisco to Sitka. My reputation's got marks on it I couldn't rub off if I wanted to. I am what I am. I don't know how they finally settle things in this world or the next. But when the day comes, I'll stand there with my chin up and take what's coming to me. And I wouldn't trade places with you, you white-livered, sweet-smelling hypocrite, if they gave me a one-way ticket to hell!
By 1929, all of Hollywood converts to sound, giving the studios the perfect opportunity to clean house. Louise Brooks finally returns to Hollywood, only to be cast in bad B westerns and short films.
The greatest of many ironies of Louise's downfall was that her final films were just small parts in terrible films, of which probably the most terrible is Wendy Riley Goes Hollywood.
Please, Mr. Lane, don't quit that story. Mr. LaGrosse will be here in a few minutes.
Yeah, Eddie, be a good guy. The kid will lose her contract if that goes through. When she loses her contract, I lose my money.
But the director of the film is more interesting, Fatty Arbuckle, who at that point had long disgraced himself and been out of work and was allowed to come back and try to redeem himself by directing, but only if he used the pseudonym Will Be Good.
Like a couple of saps.
It's such a sad ending for both of them.
Sound alters audiences' expectations and makes it impossible for more demure and older actresses to compete.
Was that all right?
The sound coming was really an absolute nightmare. It's hard to describe the panic for everybody. The whole town was shaken.
The classic play Rain is remade, but in an entirely different style, starring Joan Crawford.
Gloria Swanson was a lady who just happened to be in a questionable profession, whereas with Crawford, you kind of got the feeling she really liked it.
You're not the type that needs hooch to pep you up.
Ah, I was born hooch.
Holy Willie, look at this. The Wabash Blues.
Music and a nip of liquor. That's what a rainy day is for, says I. Can you dance, handsome?
Joan Crawford was a performer of much greater ferocity. She was more mannish in some respects, and I think that colored her performance.
Mr. Davidson, why do you worry about me?
You have had your own soul and trust, and you have failed. It is my business to show you the way to redeem it.
Haven't I anything to say about myself, then?
You can choose but one of two paths.
What's the second choice?
Destruction.
And who's gonna destruct me?
Films got a little bit down and dirty in the 30s.
Oh, I didn't know you were in a shower. Did you have a good time with Oscar and the Medicine Ball?
Warner Brothers decided that we're going to shoot the headlines, and this is not a happy time, and we're going to show that.
Yeah, I'm a tramp, and who's to blame? My father. A swell start you gave me. Ever since I was 14, what's it been? Nothing but men, dirty, rotten men, and you're lower than any of them. I'll hate you as long as I live.
While there is a rough production code still in place, filmmakers continue to work around it.
Oh, not here. Somebody may... What could I do? He's my boss, and I have to earn my own living. Are you letting me go?
I'll need everything I've given you. All your bonds and securities.
I can't do it. I have to think of myself. I've gone through a lot to get those things. My life has been bitter and hard. I'm not like other women.
There were a lot of things that the studios fought, and they would get around it by various devious ways of doing it.
Oh, I'm hot. Oh, I wonder where my dress is. I did have a dress once. Pardon my appearance.
I find it hard to.
Suddenly you had this enormous tug of war between, on the one hand, the god of commerce, and on the other hand, the god of God.
No, Mr. Davidson. Your God and me could never be shipmates. And the next time you talk to him, you can tell him this for me, that Sadie Thompson is on her way to hell.
Stop! This has gone far enough.
Oh, no, it hasn't gone far enough. You've been telling me what's wrong with me. Now I'm going to tell you what's wrong with you. You keep yelling at me to be punished, to go back and suffer. How do you know what I've suffered? You don't know, you don't care, and you don't even ask, and you call yourself a Christian. Well, you're nothing but a miserable witch-bird, and that's what you are. You believe in torture.
Thy kingdom come.
You know you're big, and you know you're strong, and you have the law on your side and the power to hang me. All right. But I've got the power to stand here and say, you hang me and be damned to you.
The Catholic Church, which was very powerful in those days, and all these other decency groups complaining about the movies. And so the studios are really caught in a vice here, because they want to make money, especially during the Depression, when many of the studios, including Paramount, either went into receivership or came darn close.
Cecil just had to change a few details. We couldn't have women being strangled in the bedroom so often, you know.
In 1931, Jean Harlow appears in The Iron Man.
Now, isn't that better? Forgive me, darling.
The story of a manipulative girl who returns to her husband only when he becomes a champion in the ring.
Well, you don't have to worry. The kid's been knocking him over lately.
Oh, I read every word of it. That's all I had eyes for.
Oh, you've been following his doings, huh? I thought you'd be interested.
Her and her lover almost ruin him, but they destroy themselves in the end.
Say, what do you think I'm gonna do, support you? Do you think I'm gonna be your meal ticket? Huh.
Oh, that's the angle, is it? I'm the holder bag, am I? Well, you started this. You're the cause of my wife leaving me.
Oh, quit your crying. We're in a jam, and it's every man for himself.
Jean Harlow was terrifically desirable because she had a kind of quality of abandon, really unrestricted. She was reckless, obviously indicated by the fact that she did not favor underwear, famously.
Although her talent is clearly undiminished and her public appeal still strong, Clara Bow retires at the age of 28. She states later on, "A sex symbol is a heavy load to carry when one is tired, hurt, and bewildered." Marlene Dietrich has become one of the most powerful women in Hollywood.
Dietrich became a star so quickly because there was something in her that people wanted in Garbo and didn't find. Self-mocking humor.
Could do you more good.
What makes you think I'm nervous?
One thing, your hands are trembling.
That's because you touched me, Doc.
In Joseph von Sternberg's Shanghai Express, she plays the exotic Shanghai Lily, a mysterious call girl who has become entangled in political espionage.
Could I persuade
In
you
Shanghai
to
Express, people come to her.
till such time as you should grow weary of me?
I'm weary of you now.
The warlord even has to come to her to negotiate with her. Even though she's held captive, she has a power over him.
Don't touch me.
Dietrich and von Sternberg are a perfect match for each other, both off and on the screen. She writes, "I am his product, all of his making, and I am fascinated by that face up there on the screen and look forward to the rushes each day to see what I, his creature, will look like." Dietrich's love and respect for von Sternberg does not deter her carefree lifestyle. She simply cannot be monogamous.
A lot of people could claim they could create their own rules. Dietrich did create her own rules. This woman is not only insatiable, she's calling the shots.
Don't forget, we traveled with my father and his mistress, you know, and she traveled with her lover. Most of my dear friends came from my mother's lovers. I had a lot of strange fathers. Some of them were women, some of them were men. When people say to me, "How's your father?" I usually say, "Well, which father would you like me to talk about?"
Mae West finally crosses over from the stage to the screen. She is bright and outspoken on the subject of sex. Dietrich finds her refreshing and is delighted to have her on the Paramount lot.
Marlene and Mae recognized each other as really liberated women, both on the screen and in their personal life.
She got some flowers, some roses from Dietrich. She says, "You know, I think this Dietrich broad is hot for me." Even though Dietrich was bisexual, I don't think Miss West was. If she was, it would have to be an awful masculine woman.
Paramount contemplates what to do with this dangerous yet profitable actress.
For Mae, we had a man named Luigi Luraski, and one of Luigi's jobs was to shepherd Mae through her pictures. And Luigi would get a call, "Mae's at it again," and she'd be doing something, either in action or voice or in her body movements, and he said, "Mae, you can't do that in this." She said, "Okay, I won't do that, but you can't stop me from doing this."
Come up again, anytime.
I shall. Then I hope you will be alone.
So do I. Warm, dark, and handsome.
Mae decides to bring her greatest achievement on stage to life upon the screen from her stage creation of Diamond Lil. "It was no cinch putting Lil into films," Mae laments. "The censors, you know. No rough stuff. And it's hard to be funny when you have to be clean."
Come up, I'll tell your fortune. Ah, you can be had.
The censor Jeffrey Sherlock said, we weren't used to having sex kidded.
So, the minute my back is turned, I find you making love to another woman.
What do you expect he'd be doing? Why, a boy with a gift like that should be working at it.
She said, oh, I recall being with those censors in the projection booth, and they were laughing. And of course, then after the screening was over, well, we have to cut this, maybe we have to cut this, we have to cut this. In the papers, church people preach against Mae West on Sunday, but then Monday and Tuesday night they're in the theater laughing along with everybody else.
William Randolph Hearst attacks Mae West in the press. He states, "Isn't it about time that Congress did something about Mae West?"
Any form of censorship would inspire her all the more to subvert it.
Your bath is ready, Miss Lou. You take it. I'm indisposed.
She could make reading the phone book a suggestive activity. So they might censor her plots or her dialogue, but they couldn't really censor her personality very well.
I'm sorry you think more of your diamonds than you do of your soul.
I'm sorry you think more of my soul than you do of my diamonds. Maybe I ain't got no soul.
Her sexual frankness alarms the forces of reaction. The Catholic Legion of Decency is formed in 1933. Its aim is to stop all forms of incitement to moral depravity in movies.
In 1933, it really took a grassroots movement, and that's namely the Catholics, to form an organization. The bishops went into the pulpit and said, you can't go to any movies this week under pain of sin, mortal sin.
Prohibition is lifted in December 1933, and the country no longer has to hide its thirst. 6 months later, the movie studios finally acquiesced to censorship. They could not afford a boycott led from America's pulpits.
It all came together in one big boom that fell on Hollywood on July 1st, 34, when they had to sign this Production Code Administration Agreement.
That was another way of also tamping down on creativity. These onslaughts seem to come in waves, like one after another.
A filmmaker does not want censorship. A filmmaker wants to be free to create and tell a certain kind of a story. But I think the filmmaker should have the right to make the film that he or she wants to make.
One last film gets through before the axe falls. Of Human Bondage is the story of a cruel woman who seduces a man, uses him up, and ruins his life.
Of Human Bondage was made in a period which was the spring of 1934, when there still was no really enforceable code. There was a code, but it had no teeth.
You disgust me.
Me? I disgust you. You. You're too fine. You won't have none of me, but you'll sit here all night looking at your naked females.
Mildred.
You cad! You dirty swine! I never cared for you, not once. I was always making a fool of you. You bored me stiff. I hated you. It made me sick when I had to let you kiss me. I only did it because you begged me. You hounded me. You drove me crazy. And after you kissed me, I always used to wipe my mouth. Wipe my mouth!
For example, they changed the fatal illness of the Bette Davis character from syphilis to probably tuberculosis. You can't really tell what it is she's dying of.
Well, this is what you might call the irony of fate.
The censorship-minded people say, thank God we had the production code to clean up Hollywood, but the production code was probably one of the worst things that happened to Hollywood, and that most of the classic movies of that era were classic in spite of the code, not because of it.
John Gilbert's own path of self-destruction has led him past the point of redemption for his career. He succumbs to alcoholism and dies in January 1936.
I had created a whole fantasy life of growing up with him. I had this great feeling of security that I'd never had, and then, boom, it was over.
A sex symbol's prime is limited. Some disappear into the shadows, while others continue to wear the mask of a goddess. Mae West is unapologetic.
Mae's two first films were out of circulation for 30 years. Ultimately, it's good to break down barriers at whatever cost, even if there's a lengthy backlash. You'll ultimately prevail.
She states, "I freely chose the life that I led because I was convinced that a woman has as much right as a man to live the way she does if she does no actual harm to society. What few people realize is that my work has had a deliberate plan and purpose."
You had to be eternally youthful and eternally beautiful. You see, there are more than a few gray hairs, and there are more than a few lines, and if you've smoked 100,000 cigarettes, that's going to show it.
Over and over again, the people who wander through life never really realizing that they have absolutely nothing to do with their fate. But when you're my age, you look back and you'll see you really had no control.
Clara Bow reflects on her heyday in Hollywood. "We had individuality," she says. "We did as we pleased. We dressed the way we wanted. Today they're sensible and end up with better health. But we had more fun." Dietrich takes a different approach. "There is a lack of dignity to stardom," she states. "I was an actress. I made films. Finish." Film fades. It disintegrates. Sometimes it is restored and preserved. Decades later, some of these films can once again be seen as they were made, now and hopefully for all time.
The beauty of it. We forget it. They throw it in a trash bin. That was beautiful acting.
Later in life, Gloria Swanson searched for her lost films. She states, "I would love to see them again and know that they are not lost forever. That, after all, was supposed to be the great virtue of pictures. That they would last forever."
I love your loving arms, they hold a world of charms, a place to nestle when I am lonely, a cozy Morris chair, oh what a happy pair, one caress, happiness seems to bless my little honey. I love you more each day, when years have passed away, you'll find my love belongs to you only. And when the world seems wrong, I know that I belong right in my honey's loving arms.
Why, oh, why be good when being bad is so sublime? After all, before the fall, were we really having such a good time? Why, oh, why be good when the opposite is so much fun? It makes me frown to turn it down. The devil's got me on the run. In the Garden of Eden, my sweetie and me, sitting there naked to the serpent's tree. If he says have an apple of 2, have 3, I wouldn't resist at all. Why be good when immorality is just so swell? I can't say no, so off I go. I'm going straight to help me, please. I'm falling.
Why be good? You never